We manage about a total of 83,000 taps, 71,000 run right into the sugar house here. And of that, so you can't see too much of it. So we sugar everything from that ridge line way off through the top of the trees there, actually to the other side of it, way deep into the basin, back into the snow, over this ridge and down the other side. Here we manage, I think it's about 1,300 acres. It all runs downhill right into the basement of the sugar house. These two-line systems, one over the top of the other, are what we call conductors. And if you think of the network of tubing and pipes in our woods, kind of like a riparian system with smaller tubing running into bigger tubing, running into bigger pipe, running into the biggest pipes, running into our basement. This is the bottom of it all. It all funnels into here. And there's sap running through here right now. At the moment it's running to the sugar house, maybe 4,000 or 5,000 gallons an hour, half of which is right here coming through these pipes. Of our 80 some odd thousand taps that we're managing this year, we have about 830 miles of pipeline and tubing in the woods. That's really the job. It's maintaining that network, against disturbance, whether it's natural disturbance like wind or ice or tree limbs, or wildlife or recreationists, or just frankly fatigue or photo degradation. There's a lot of work. It's all under vacuum, and we're constantly, there's a crew of 12 out in the woods maintaining that system. Whether maple producers are certified or not, there's an awful lot of good, responsible producers out there. What the certification gets is it's a third party that comes in and looks at our woods and confirms that we're using best management practices, particularly with respect to bird habitat. So what we do differently than what some other sugar makers might do is we don't manage for one species, and we don't cut out snags, and we leave in a lot of understory brush. And in fact, if you go through our woods to more the old school sugar maker, frankly, it looks like a mess. To wildlife, it looks fantastic. So for my wife and I, it was a no-brainer. We were managing the woods in this manner anyway. We've had an organic certified vegetable and flower farm since we moved to Vermont in 2000. And this is our 11th year of making maple syrup. We've always been organic. In fact, I'm on the board of the Vermont Northeast Organic Farmers Association, as well as Audubon Vermont. Like, these weren't hard choices for us because we were already doing it anyway. So it's just nice to have the recognition. One of the things that you're assured of when you're buying bird-friendly maple is that the woods are managed in a way that promotes wildlife, and birds in particular, but just wildlife in general. So we don't cull non-maple species out. We don't remove snags or understory brush. And when Audubon Vermont came through, the wildlife biologist, he spent I think the better part of 5 days in our woods, walking like just the whole property and just taking a really, really thorough inventory of our woods and the habitat diversity. And that was really cool from an owner standpoint to take a good comprehensive look at what we had available. So that's really what the difference is. We have someone who comes in our woods and says that we're doing a good job managing it for birds. Sap in motion. We manage about 83,000 taps, 71,000 taps run into here. They come into the building in these pipes under vacuum. So part of the trick is getting the sap out of the vacuum system without breaking that vacuum seal. So that's what these pieces of equipment do. They're called releasers, and the sap runs into them under vacuum. And inside the main chamber, there's a pump which pumps out the sap into this tank. So we have 6 releasers in here. Each one's connected to its own vacuum pump. And right now, collectively, they're probably running about 4,000, 4,500 gallons an hour. From this tank, we pump it out through a series of pumps and a primary filtration. and it goes into our tank building next door, which we can go look at in a moment. We have two reverse osmosis machines, one on the left and its twin on the right. And what they do is they separate water out of the sap before we boil it. So for those folks who don't know, sap comes out of a tree at about 2% sugar content. The syrup is about 67%. So traditionally, the way you made syrup was when you boil off the extra water, which it takes about, on average 45 gallons of sap to make 1 gallon of syrup. What we do now for time savings, labor efficiency, and energy efficiency is we use reverse osmosis equipment, and that removes about 90% of the water for us. So it goes from requiring about 4 gallons of oil to make a gallon of syrup down to about a quart or less of oil to make a gallon of syrup. And this just does it mechanically. We have 10 7,000 gallon tanks here. Behind me are 8 of them. The first 2 to my left and right are just for permeate, which is the water that we're removing out of the sap before boiling it. And then the back 6 are for raw sap, which comes in from the woods down into the releaser room, and then it's pumped up here, where then it's taken through the RO. Sap and water are separated. The water goes here, and the concentrated sap goes into the 2 tanks that are behind you. Look just like these, and that's what we boil out of. So this is pure water running into here, removed right from the sap. We process perhaps on average about 2 million gallons of sap in a year. Of that 2 million gallons, 1,960,000 gallons is pure water that we have to remove, and we'll make on average about 40,000 gallons of syrup out of that. So one of these tanks on average makes somewhere between 1.5 and 3 55-gallon barrels worth of syrup. So it's very energy intensive to remove that. Why don't we take a look at some of the raw sap? It's kind of cool looking. So the raw sap, it's actually, we're about mid-season, and depending on where you are in the season depends really on how clear the sap is. And this also came in the morning when it tends to be a little cloudier. So this is pretty cloudy. When it's early sap, it's really clear and you can see right through it. Then it starts looking more like seawater. But if you were to try this, like you can barely taste the sweetness on it. Like just barely on the tongue. It's just minorly sweet. It's really just like water. Oh, that's sap coming in. Check that out. This is the sap that's coming in from the releaser room that we started in, and it's filling this tank right now. In a good run, we'll fill this tank in about 40 minutes. Well, to be honest, we try not to fill the tank. We're constantly processing it as it's coming in. But if we were to let it fill, that's how quickly it would fill. And we've had as much as 24,000 gallons come in a single hour, and that's enough to fill 3.5 tanks in an hour, which is a lot. At least for us it is. So from the tank building, as I mentioned in there, we have a couple tanks where we put our concentrated sap into. So the concentrated sap is 10 times the concentration of the sap that comes in from the trees. And from there, it goes into one of our 2 evaporator pans. And we use steam to boil our syrup. So the steam's not in direct contact with the sap. It runs through stainless tubes, stainless heat exchangers, and that boils the sap or the concentrate. So the concentrated sap goes into the evaporator, and it goes through like a serpentine system inside of these pans. And as it makes its way through, it's boiling off more and more water until it gets to the density that we need for syrup, which is 67% sugar by weight. Here we have a network of valves that we basically let it out when it hits the temperature we need for. So the boiling point changes with the sugar density. So we're looking for a specific temperature to indicate that it's syrup. We draw it off, which is what it's called, into stainless tanks. And from there, we filter out the minerals that precipitate out of solution when we're boiling it. And we use this, this is what's called a filter press. We use that to filter the syrup. And then from there, we put it in barrels, and we store it in the barrels until we're ready to bottle it.